I was working at a train station ticket counter in Brussels when an American woman walked up holding her phone like it was broken. She tapped the screen against the counter and said her app wasn't working. I asked which app. She said the train app. I looked at her phone. She had downloaded the Deutsche Bahn app, the German train app, for Belgium. I told her she needed the SNCB app for Belgian trains. She stared at me and said, "But we're in Europe. Isn't it all the same?" I blinked. Most people stop at stories like this and laugh. I go further. I decode why these moments happen and what they reveal about how cultures think. If that kind of analysis hits different for you, you'll want to be subscribed. She genuinely thought Europe had one train system. Like we all share the same app, the same trains, the same tickets. I explained that every country has its own train company. She looked betrayed. Like I had personally failed her by not unifying the continent's railways. Another guy that same week asked me why his ticket said 20:45 when the train left at 8:45 p.m. I explained that we use 24-hour time here. He said, "But why would you make it confusing?" I told him it wasn't confusing if you grew up with it. He said Americans don't need military time because we're not in the military. I didn't know how to respond to that. He missed his train because he showed up 12 hours early and then argued with me about refunds. My coworker had a family come in asking for tickets to Paris. She asked when they wanted to travel. They said next Tuesday. She pulled up the schedule. The dad interrupted and asked why it costs money. She thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said, "In America, you just get on the train." She explained that European trains require tickets. He said Amtrak doesn't charge this much. She checked. Their route was Brussels to Paris. First class. Peak hours. It came to about €180 total for 4 people. He acted like she'd just robbed him. He asked if there was a bus. She said yes. He asked if the bus was free. She said no. He stood there silently for a full minute, then bought the tickets. I once had a woman ask me if she needed her passport to go to Amsterdam. I said no, just an ID if you're European, but she should bring her passport to be safe. She said she was American. I told her yes, definitely bring your passport. She asked why. I explained that she's not European, so she needs it for identification. She said, "But I'm already in Europe. I'm in Brussels." I told her Brussels is in Belgium. Amsterdam is in the Netherlands. Different countries. She said, "But it's all Europe." I gave up and just said, "Yes, bring your passport." She did not bring her passport. She called me from the Dutch border 2 hours later, upset. I was working at a hostel reception desk in Prague when a guy checked in and immediately asked where the ice machine was. I told him we don't have one. He looked confused. He asked how he's supposed to get ice. I said most Europeans don't use ice in drinks. He said that's impossible. I offered him ice from the kitchen. He asked if he could just take the whole tray to his room. I said no. He asked why Europe doesn't believe in ice. I told him we believe in it. We just don't obsess over it. He left a 1-star review saying we were primitive. A woman once asked me if she could use her American outlet adapter in Prague. I asked what kind of adapter. She showed me. It was for converting European plugs to American outlets. Backwards. I explained she needed the opposite. She insisted that her adapter would work because it fit into the wall. I told her it would fit, but her American devices wouldn't fit into the adapter. She tried anyway. Came back 10 minutes later asking why her hairdryer wouldn't plug in. I showed her the correct adapter. She bought it, but seemed annoyed that she had to spend €8. My friend worked at a car rental place in Munich. An American couple rented a manual transmission car. They specifically asked for manual because it was cheaper. They came back 20 minutes later saying the car was broken. My friend went to check. The car was fine. They didn't know how to drive stick shift. They thought manual just meant it didn't have automatic parking. My friend asked why they rented a manual if they couldn't drive it. The husband said he thought he could figure it out. They had stalled the car 4 times in the parking lot. My friend swapped them to an automatic and charged them the difference. They wrote a complaint email saying rental companies should clarify what manual transmission means. I had a guest ask me why the light switches in his room were outside the bathroom. I explained that's how it's done in many older European buildings. He said it made no sense. I agreed it was inconvenient, but told him that's just how the building was wired. He said in America, switches are always inside the bathroom. I told him that's nice. He spent the rest of his stay flipping the hallway light on and off by mistake. Another guy asked why his room didn't have air conditioning. I told him the building was built in 1890 and never got AC installed. He asked how people survive the summer. I said we open windows. He said that doesn't work. I told him it's worked for centuries. He bought a portable fan and then complained that it was too loud. He asked for a refund on the fan. I explained I didn't sell him the fan. He'd bought it at a store down the street. A family checked in during August and asked why the tap water was warm. I explained that it's summer and the pipes aren't chilled. They said American water comes out cold. I told them to let it run for a minute. They let it run. Still warm. The mom said she couldn't drink warm water. I offered them bottled water. They asked why they had to pay for bottled water when tap water is free. I said tap water is free here too. It's just not cold. They filled up every container they had and put them in the mini fridge. Didn't buy anything from the fridge because it was full of their water bottles. I once had a man complain that the elevator was too small. I told him it was built in the 1920s and fits 3 people comfortably. He said he was 3 people. I looked. He was alone. He meant he and his 2 suitcases. I explained he could take 2 trips. He said that's inefficient. I suggested he take the stairs. He asked if there was a luggage elevator. I said no. He dragged both suitcases into the tiny elevator anyway. Got stuck. I had to help him pull one suitcase back out. He took the stairs. A guest asked me why there were 2 buttons on the toilet. I explained one is for a small flush and one is for a large flush. He asked how you're supposed to know which to use. I told him it depends on what you need to flush. He said that's too complicated. I said it saves water. He said American toilets flush everything with 1 button. I told him that's less efficient. He used the large flush for everything and then lectured me about how dual flush toilets are a scam. Another woman asked why breakfast was only until 10 a.m. I explained that's standard for most hotels. She said in America, breakfast is until 11. I told her she could wake up earlier. She said she's on vacation and doesn't wake up before 10:30. I suggested she grab something from a cafe. She said she already paid for breakfast in her booking. I showed her the booking terms. Breakfast until 10 a.m. She set an alarm. Woke up at 10:15, came downstairs angry. Asked why we didn't hold breakfast for her. I told her we pack everything away at 10. She asked if I could make her toast. I made her toast. She asked for eggs. I said the kitchen was closed. She ate the toast in silence. I was working as a tour guide in Rome when a man asked me how old the Colosseum is. I told him it was completed in 80 AD. He said, 80 AD? That's before America was discovered. I said yes. He asked how that was possible. I didn't understand the question. He clarified. He thought the Colosseum was built after Europeans came to America. I explained that Rome was an empire 2,000 years ago. He said he didn't realize Europe was that old. I told him human civilization started in Europe, Asia, and Africa. He nodded but looked confused. Another woman asked me if Italians spoke Italian or European. I said Italian. She asked what the difference was. I explained that European isn't a language. She said she thought everyone in Europe spoke the same language. I listed a few languages: Italian, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, Dutch. She interrupted and asked how people communicate. I said most people learn multiple languages or use English. She said that sounded exhausting. A guy on my tour asked why Rome had so many old buildings. I told him because Rome is an ancient city. This isn't about making fun of anyone. It's about understanding how people see the world. That's the kind of depth I bring every week here. Subscribe and start seeing global culture with context most people never get. He said, America doesn't have old buildings like this. I explained that America is a much younger country. He said America has buildings from the 1800s. I said Rome has buildings from before the year 1. He said that's impossible because the calendar starts at year 1. I told him the calendar is based on the approximate birth of Christ, but civilizations existed long before that. He said that didn't make sense. I moved on. My coworker told me about an American couple who asked if the Roman Empire was the same as the Holy Roman Empire. She said no. They asked what the difference was. She explained that the Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, and the Holy Roman Empire was a medieval entity that started in 800 AD. They asked if it was a sequel. She said not exactly. They asked if Italians were still upset about losing the empire. She said no. They seemed disappointed. I had a guest ask me if the Sistine Chapel was in the Vatican or in Italy. I told him the Vatican is in Italy. He said he thought the Vatican was its own country. I said it is, but it's surrounded by Rome. He asked how that works. I explained that the Vatican is a city-state within Italy. He said that sounded illegal. I told him it's been that way since 1929. He asked if Italy ever tried to take it back. I said no. He said America would never allow another country inside its borders. I didn't mention Native American reservations. A woman asked me if people in Rome spoke Latin. I said no, they speak Italian. She said she thought Roman people spoke Roman. I clarified that Latin is a dead language. She asked when it died. I said it gradually evolved into Italian and other Romance languages over centuries. She asked if she could still learn it. I said yes, but it's mostly for academic purposes. She said she wanted to speak to locals in their native language. I told her their native language is Italian. She learned 3 Latin phrases from a souvenir book and tried to use them at a restaurant. The waiter stared at her. I once had a man ask me why Italy had a king if it was a democracy. I told him Italy doesn't have a king. He said he saw pictures of the king. I asked what pictures. He showed me a photo of the Pope. I explained that the Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church, not the King of Italy. He asked what the difference was. I said one is a religious leader and the other would be a political leader. He asked if the Pope makes laws. I said only within the Vatican. He said that still sounded like a king. I gave up. Another guy asked me if Italians were offended that Americans improved pizza. I asked what he meant. He said American pizza is better. I told him that's subjective. He said it's a fact. He listed pizza chains. I told him Italian pizza is different, but not worse. He said Italian pizza doesn't have enough cheese. I said, that's by design. He said design is what makes American pizza better. I stopped engaging. A family asked me if Rome was always the capital of Italy. I said no, Italy unified in 1861 and Rome became the capital in 1871. They asked where the capital was before. I said Turin, then Florence. They asked why it changed. I explained the political history of Italian unification. The dad interrupted and said America never changed its capital. I mentioned Philadelphia. He paused, then said that didn't count because it was before Washington, D.C. was built. I said that's still a capital change. He disagreed. I had a woman ask me if Italians celebrated the 4th of July. I said no. She asked why not. I said it's an American holiday. She said, but Italy loves freedom too. I told her Italy has its own Independence Day. She asked when. I said April 25th, Liberation Day. She'd never heard of it. I explained it commemorates the end of fascist rule in 1945. She said that sounded sad. I said it's actually a celebration. She said the 4th of July is more fun. I was working at a cafe in Amsterdam when a customer asked for a coffee to go. I made it. She asked why the cup was so small. I told her it's a standard European coffee size. She said American coffee cups are bigger. I offered her a larger size. She said the large was still small. I explained that European coffee is stronger, so the servings are smaller. She said she wanted a bucket of coffee. I told her we don't serve buckets. She ordered 3 cups and poured them into her water bottle. A guy came in and asked if we had free refills. I said no. He asked why not. I explained that free refills aren't a thing in most of Europe. He said that's a scam. I told him the coffee is priced accordingly. He said in America, you can drink unlimited coffee for $3. I told him our coffee was €2. He said that's basically the same price, but with no refills. I told him he was welcome to order another cup. He ordered 1 cup and nursed it for 2 hours. Another customer asked why we charged for tap water. I told her we don't. She pointed at the menu. Water, €1. I explained that's bottled water. Tap water is free if you ask. She said the menu should say that. I told her most people just know. She asked for tap water. I brought it. She asked if it was safe to drink. I said yes. She asked if I was sure. I said I drink it every day. She took a tiny sip and then ordered bottled water anyway. I had a man ask me why the cafe didn't have ice. I told him we have ice, but we don't put it in drinks automatically. He said that's how drinks are served. I explained that in Europe, ice is optional. He said his Coke was warm. I felt the glass. It was cold. He said it wasn't cold enough. I offered him ice. He said it was too late because the drink was already ruined. He drank the whole thing and then ordered another one, with ice this time. A woman asked me if we accepted dollars. I said no, only euros. She said she didn't have euros. I told her there was an ATM 2 doors down. She said she didn't want to pay the conversion fee. I suggested she pay with a card. She said her card charges foreign transaction fees. I told her those are her only options. She asked if I could just take dollars and do the math myself. I said no. She left and came back 20 minutes later with euros. My coworker had a guy ask why the bill didn't include tax. She explained that tax is already included in the price. He said, "That's confusing." She said, "It's simpler because you know exactly what you'll pay." He said, "In America, tax is added at the end." She said she knew. He said the European way made it hard to calculate tips. She told him tipping isn't expected in the Netherlands. He said everyone should tip. She said it's not part of the culture. He left €2 on a €30 bill and acted like he'd done her a favor. I once had a family come in and ask if we had a kids menu. I said no. They asked what kids are supposed to eat. I told them kids can order from the regular menu. The mom said the portions are too big. I offered to split a dish. She said that costs extra. I said no, it's free. She seemed suspicious. She ordered 1 sandwich and asked for 2 plates. I brought 2 plates. She split the sandwich, then asked if she could have extra fries. I said that would cost extra. She said, I just told her splitting was free. I explained that splitting the existing food is free, but extra food costs money. She said that didn't make sense. A man asked me why we didn't have outlets by every table. I told him the building is old and wasn't designed for laptops. He said cafes should have charging stations. I pointed to the 2 outlets near the bar. He said that wasn't enough. I told him he could sit near the bar. He said he wanted to sit by the window. I said the window seats don't have outlets. He sat by the window and then came back every 20 minutes asking if his laptop could charge at the bar while he sat at his table. I said yes. He did this 4 times. Another customer asked why the bathroom required a coin. I explained that public restrooms in Europe often cost money. She said that's theft. I told her it's for maintenance. She said bathrooms should be free. I said some are, but this one isn't. She asked what happens if she doesn't have a coin. I offered to give her change. She paid, came back and said the bathroom was too clean for 50 cents. I didn't know how to respond. A guy asked me why the cafe closed at 6 p.m. I told him that's our closing time. He said cafes in America stay open late. I explained that Amsterdam has different hours. He said he wanted to work on his laptop until midnight. I suggested he find a cafe that's open late. He said he liked this one. I told him we'd be here again tomorrow at 8 a.m. He said that didn't solve his problem. I agreed, but told him we were still closing at 6. He packed up and left at 6:15. I had to ask him to leave twice. I was working at a hotel in Vienna when a BATI guest checked out and told me he finally understood Europe. I asked what he meant. He said Americans and Europeans just think differently. I agreed. He said Americans are more logical. I didn't agree, but I nodded politely. He explained that American systems make sense because they're designed for convenience. I said European systems also make sense if you grow up with them. He said maybe, but America does it better. I told him that's subjective. He said it's objective because more people speak English than any other language. I told him Mandarin has more native speakers. He paused, then said, English is more useful. I didn't argue. Another guest told me that Europe would be better if it was more like America. I asked in what way. She said everything. The food, the service, the outlets, the ice. I told her that if Europe was like America, it wouldn't be Europe anymore. She said exactly. It would be better. I smiled and wished her a safe flight home. My coworker told me about a family who spent 2 weeks in Europe and complained the entire time. They hated the trains, the language barriers, the measurements, the money, the toilets, the electrical plugs, the lack of free water, the small coffee cups, the tile floors, the narrow streets, the old buildings. She asked them why they came to Europe if they hated it so much. The dad said they wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. She asked if they liked the Eiffel Tower. He said it was smaller than he thought. I think the funniest part of working with American tourists isn't the complaints. It's the confidence, the absolute certainty that the American way is the only logical way. That 24-hour time is confusing, that the metric system is unnecessary, that Europe should have free refills and ice machines and outlets everywhere, that we're all just doing it wrong. But here's the thing, we're not doing it wrong, we're just doing it different, and that's fine. America has its systems, Europe has its systems. Neither is better or worse. They're just different. But try telling that to someone who just missed their train because they didn't understand military time. The stories never stop. Every day there's a new one. Someone asking why their phone doesn't work. Someone confused about the bill. Someone shocked that we don't take dollars. Someone baffled by a bidet. And honestly, I don't mind. It makes the job entertaining. Plus, it reminds me that the world is big and confusing, and everyone's just trying to figure it out. If this made you see travel, or people, a little differently, that's exactly what this channel is built for. Subscribe and stay a few steps ahead of the conversations most people never get past the surface of. Even if some of us think we've already figured it all out.